We'll hand over to Imke, who will introduce us into the Power BI Cleaner tool. And then lastly, we have Mathias introducing again another tool, the PBI tools in this case. To let you know, we have also some other meetups in Switzerland as well. We are now based in Kloten, not in Wallisellen anymore, but we have one in Geneva, led by Anne. So if you wish to participate there, feel free to reach out to her. Same goes for St. Gallen. In this case, it's René. She is in lead in the for the St. Gallen meetup. And we have a new kid in the block, which is the Basel meetup led by Dennis. Dennis, probably you can also say 1-2 words about it.
Yes, thank you, Christian. As announced at the Power BI Championship, we started now also meetups in person in Basel. We try to do it once per quarter. Last one was last week. It was around 15 people, and I also organized a little bit too late. I underestimated the effort, but at the end we had a very nice meetup, good feedback. So we will plan the next one end of September, but I will let you know and announce it again in the user group.
Great, thanks very much. And as you see, here is a little bit empty in Switzerland. So if someone wishes to do some stuff in the central or the, let's say, the Italian part of Switzerland, just let me know. Happy to support you here as well.
You encourage us to move there.
Yes, looks like. So a little bit more info, last info for those who are new. We have teams. If you wish to participate into in the teams as well, feel free to request a join. It's a forms where you have to fill in your name and email address, and that you agree that I can use your email address to put it in Teams. This means that others who are already in Teams will see your name and email address as well. Promising, no marketing behind. It's really just GDPR stuff, which we have to follow. Once you have access to Teams, let me show that probably live. Teams. Once you have access to Teams, if you're working with the Teams app, or so meaning in Windows, I would suggest that you go then through the browser because it's a little bit easier to change to the next tenant, to the Microsoft tenant. But once you're logged in, as you see, it takes a little bit. There we are. You can change the tenant. At the top right, you see this is my demo environment, Christian AG. So if I click, I can say Microsoft guest. And once it has changed, okay, I have to verify. Okay, sorry for that. Once I'm logged in and verified, you will see probably one or more, depending on how many teams you're invited from Microsoft side, but at least one, which is the Power BI user group. And in there, you have the general tab. Let me show that. We see we're already live. This is the tab that you can choose. And in the top, you can then switch between posts. So meaning you can chit chat within the community. If you go here to files, you can find all the previous recordings, all the previous slides and so on. So if you wish to have a look into it, feel free to go to this place and have a look. All right, then moving on with the latest and greatest in Power BI. I saw that I forgot last time to introduce field parameters. This is not something new in June. This has come already in May, but nevertheless, because I forgot it last time, I'm gonna take it this time to introduce you to field parameters. Then afterwards, we have some preview data in the dataset details page. We'll show that as well live, how that looks like and how it works. We have a new format pane. This is finally GA. And there is also one little nice option that you can choose. I can show that as well. We have GA of execute queries through REST API. Why this is important, I'm gonna cover that as well in the slide then. We have an improved Power BI experience in Excel. We just announced it, I think 2 or 3 days ago, and some really cool new feature, especially if you are an iOS user, data in space. I'm gonna show that as well. So let's start with field parameters. This is one really big feature from my point of view, as you can now combine different kind of fields or measures into one specific group, let's say, and you can then use this group in one visual, and depending on your selection, it can switch from one or the other field. Sounds probably a little bit complicated, but let me show you live how that looks like. It's then going to be easier. So if I head over to Power BI Desktop, if I go in the ribbon to modeling, new parameter, and say fields, I can now name my parameter to whatever I wish, field parameters or whatever. And from the right-hand side, I can choose from every table. I can choose which column I wish to include in it. So let's go to customer, let's go to city, I already had that, employee, let's go to, I don't know, brand, color, stock item as an example. And once you have your choice made, you can say create. This will generate nothing else than a DAX query behind. And it will automatically add you a visual filter. And you see, it's nothing else than text, more or less. What you can do now is, if I'm going to create a new visual, so for example, a table visual, I add my field parameter as one field. You see on the right-hand side, a new table is here with one field. And if I go now and say I wish to analyze that by profit, for example, and expand a little bit my table, make it a little bit more nicer. There we are. The beauty is now, if I select something here, this will automatically update my table on the right-hand side. So meaning if I wish to select only color, I will see only color in the table as well. And if I go further and say no, color and brand, for example, it will automatically add this new field as well. And the beauty of this is on top, if I say I wish to probably have a second graph, let's go with the cluster bar chart. Let's go by color, for example. Time. We can see the bar chart is now, or the cluster bar chart is really now just analyzing my profit by color. And if I wish to change that and I wish to see profit by customer, just select it. There you go. Employee, there you go. And if I select multiple parameters, it will create a drill down within my visual. Meaning if I select here drill down, obviously profit by employee is first level. If I drill down now, I see employee and brand. If I drill down one more time, it will be color because this is the sorting that or the selection that I made in this order. Lastly, one last cool thing I wish to show is following. As mentioned, field parameters is nothing else than DAX. Meaning you can also customize it a little bit. And sometimes if you have a lot of fields, probably you wish to group that. And you can do that by just customizing the DAX a little bit. Meaning, what I'm gonna do is I will add here at the end, after each number, just my grouping name. And this will appear as a new field, and therefore you can have it as a group. So let me do that, for example, by adding a comma and saying group 1. Let me copy that so I'm a little bit more efficient, and this should be group 2. Let's go again. Nope. This is wrong. It should be here. There we are now. So, and let's go this with group 3, and this is group 3, or let's 2, doesn't matter. Just to show you, takes a second or two, it will load. And what I have now is I have a new field, and this field can be used, for example, in my slicer. If I add it, I will have now really the grouping. And if I expand it, you can see based on my naming here, I said city should be group 1 and customer should also be group 1. This is it. And the beauty is if I select now the group, both columns will be, or both fields will be selected, and therefore pretty easy to really influence a whole group. make here a little pause. Any questions, any feedback, anything I should explain more in detail?
Excuse me?
Sure.
So after you group, you can actually just choose one parameter instead of the whole group, right?
Yes,
Like,
you can also
okay,
just go to customer, for example, or to city, and
okay,
then you just selected city instead of the whole group. This works as well.
I got you. Thank you.
Sure.
And you can extend your field parameter with more columns.
Definitely yes. I mean, as mentioned, it's just a DAX measure. You can add it here and say instead of stock item, I wish to have like let me check what I have. Let's go again for size. Let's go for size. So I'm gonna name it size. Name of this is not stock item. Please search for size. There we are. Order is number 6. It should be in group number 3 for whatever reason. Once added, I expand it, and there you go. Size is in there, and I can select it obviously. And now I'm really filtering by, or displaying size.
Great.
Any further questions? All right, then let me move back to my PowerPoint slide. The next one is the new format pane is now general available, meaning with the newest desktop, you will have automatically the newest format pane and cannot switch back anymore to the old one. There is one little nice trick that you could use if you wish. Per default, you can say if the subcategories should be expanded or not. So let me show you what I mean with that. For example, if I choose here my visual, if I go to my format pane on the right-hand side, and you see if I expand now the y-axis, the subcategory values is expanded and title is not expanded. And what I can do is if I click the 3 little dots here and say more options, I can then say the format pane itself should expand by default all subcategories. If I do that, if I hit OK, if I now expand the y-axis, you see title in this case is also expanded. Or if I expand something else, like the x-axis, one more time, all subcategories are expanded. The other way around, if I go again to more options, if I say I don't wish to expand it, hit OK. If I now expand it, you see values and title are also not expanded in this case anymore. It's an easy one. I think there are no questions. If so, let me know. All right, moving on. There is a new cool feature from my point of view in Power BI Service, which enables you to easily see what kind of tables you have in your data set and to easily check your tables and columns and rows within the data set itself. How's that possible? If we switch quickly to Power BI Service, if I go just to a data set and if I click on it, you will automatically have tables on the right-hand side here. So this means I already know, okay, my data set has like 2, 4, 6, 7 or 6 tables and 1 KPI table. And if I select now, for example, let's go with customer, and just by selecting the whole table, it will give me all columns coming from this table with all the rows in there. Obviously, I can also go and say I wish to have employee as well. And then the 3 columns included in this table will also be there. If I wish, I can also customize that. On the top right corner, I can hit customize. And in there, I can say probably I don't wish to see employee key. Let's remove that. I don't wish to see customer key. Let's remove that as well. So this is my table. And what you can do now is you can say export and export the whole table into Excel, PDF, into whatever you wish. So this is a pretty nice and easy, fast way to really extract all the data out of your table coming from a data set.
Does the row level security apply to that?
Yes. Security still applies and licensing still applies, meaning you to be able to access the dataset, you would need to have a pro license if it's in service, a free license if it's in premium, and at least for the dataset, at least build permission.
Thank you. And is there a way
there's no limit? There's no limit in row number?
This is technically a paginated report. So the limits are coming from paginated report. I'm not sure. I never hit the limit there, so not sure where it is. And it's definitely more than Power BI. So, yeah.
Is there a way to block it?
Not yet. I haven't seen a tenant setting to block that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Any further questions? Right. Then let me move on with execute queries REST API. Usually I do not talk a lot about REST APIs in the meetup community, but this one is pretty handy because let's say till today, you had to go through the XML endpoint if you wish to reach your data set outside of Power BI. But through the REST API, you can now really execute the DAX measures or DAX queries, not DAX measures, DAX queries against your data set. And you will receive an answer, obviously, through the REST API. This means no Power BI Premium is required for that. You can do that as well with Power BI Pro, Power BI Service. And even better, you don't need to be a coder to enable that. There is an out-of-the-box Power Automate action available, which you can use to execute queries. If you wish, we can do a separate session just about it, but let me show you quickly how it can be done through the Power Automate. So as an example, if I'm in desktop, just to show you that we really get the same result. If I open external tools and DAX Studio, within DAX Studio, no need to open that one. I can say, for example, evaluate my whatever table here. Missing this one. There we go. If we run that, we get a result. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Top N. Let's go for like top 10. More time. There we go. So we just got the top 10 result based on my dim city. And what I can do now is I can copy this DAX measure or DAX statement, not measure. Going back to browser, I'm already logged in here in Power Automate. Let me delete here this step to make it new. What I did is pretty simple. I have a manual trigger, but obviously if you're familiar with Power Automate, you can also schedule that. You can trigger it based on an email, for example, on a chat message, on whatever, just to trigger your flow. And once triggered, you can tell the flow what should happen. And in my case, I wish to execute, for example, a Power BI query. So I say new step, search for Power BI, select Power BI. And I think it's called not execute. What is it called? It's called run a query against a dataset or run a JSON query against a dataset. Let me make that a little bit bigger. In our case, we're going to choose run a query because we just simply want to run the query. The above one, this is if you wish to provide a JSON format query style where you have a little bit more options to influence the query. But in our case, the last one, the last action is enough. So let's take that. What I have to do is I have to select my workspace. So let's go for the Power BI guy workspace. My data set is the standard report. And in here, I just paste my previously DAX statement. And that's it. I can say save. I can say test. Let's run it manually. Run flow. Done. And it takes a second or two. There we are. And the beauty is, you see, we got an output, meaning we have the city key 64. It's the city El Portal in the state province Florida, southeast. And if you go further, we will have 10, the top 10 cities in this case, which we then can use within the flow to whatever you wish to do within the flow. As an example, you can do a much better alerting, meaning you can run a query and say if the amount is above a certain threshold, you can write you a Teams message, for example, or you can generate an email, and whatever you wish to do within Flow and whatever Flow supports will be possible as well. Questions to that? All right. No questions. Then I have two more slides. One is the improved Power BI experience within Excel. This is also just pretty simple to show. Let me open Excel. This means if you're in Excel, go to data, say get data from Power Platform and choose from Power BI. On the right-hand side, this experience has a little bit improved now. So you will see all data sets that you have access to. And once loaded, you have a search button, a little bit better, meaning you can search by data set name, workspace name, or report name, not workspace name, and by owner. And in my case, I go, for example, for my own name, hit enter. And these are all data sets that I'm owner of. And what you can see, for example, in this here, this is the Teams Activity Analytics. I have like 5 tables, and I have one Power BI report which is built on top of this data set. If I expand that, both of them, pretty nice. I can see which tables are in there. Probably this helps me to understand it a little bit better. And I can see as well the report. And if I click on it, it's a hyperlink, meaning it will open up my Power BI report and show me already the report. I will need to sign in. It's my Microsoft account. I'm not going to do so, but just to show you that this is possible now through the better experience within Excel. And lastly, one last slide, it's the data in space. This is something that I know we worked a long time until we finally announced it, and it's now available for iOS. So not for Android, just for iOS. This means it's a Power BI mobile feature. And what you can do is, as you probably see here in the GIF, you can, through augmented reality, turn on your camera and you can pin a Power BI report or a visual on a specific point. And this is done by, through the so-called spatial anchors, meaning it will be saved there, and everyone in your organization who has access to it will also be able to see the same report, the same visual on the same spot that you pinned it. To be able to do so, there are 3 or 4 requirements right now. The fourth one is you need an iOS mobile phone, not an Android one. The other one is you need to have Azure Spatial Anchors resource. You have to create it and link it with Power BI. Once connected, you have to assign the user a pin or a scan space role. Pin means you're allowed to pin the report. A scan means you are just allowed to read it and see it. And the Android version will follow later on this year. This is what's promised. I hope it will come as well, so I can test it because I do not have an iOS, only an Android. But it's already looking pretty nice in the example here. Any questions to that?
Sorry, I have a question about the Excel.
Oh yes, please.
Power BI. So I'm not sure when you import the data from Power BI into Excel, can you just have access to whatever Power BI report you have access to?
Yes, security still applies, meaning the data sets that you can connect to there are those data sets that you have already access to. So you cannot overcome security just by using Excel.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Sure. Any further questions?
What's a good
Right.
use case for data in space?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I haven't heard it very well.
What's a good use case for this data in space with this augmented reality where you can pin these reports?
A use case which is mentioned on the website is facility management, for example. So you can pin a report right in front of your stock items or whatever. So you have you do not have to count, or you have a better overview in a facility management environment. I'm sure probably a machine. Like a production machine in a production environment where you produce some goods can also be a good use case. So you can pin the report, and probably you can see on a live dashboard how the machine is performing, how many goods it has produced in the last hour, stuff like that.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Oh yeah, please, another question. Yes.
Another good use case would be air quality.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good use case. So you know in which area the air quality is better or not so good. All right, I see I took a little bit more time than expected, so let me move on. As usual, if you're interested in the release plans of what's coming in the upcoming 6 months, feel free to visit the report over here or to go to the roadmap of Power BI. And with that, I'm very happy to welcome Imke. Imke, still with us?
Yes, I'm still with you.
Very good.
Thanks.
So welcome
Thanks.
to the user group Switzerland, and yeah, happy to hand over for the introduction of your Power BI Cleaner tool.
Thank you, Christian. Yeah, hello everyone. Nice to see you all here. Today I want to show you my Power BI Cleaner tool, which helps you identifying unused DAX measures and columns. So let me share my screen. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Good. So this is a ordinary Power BI report that you see here, and actually I'm gonna move to a different screen. Hang on a second. So now you should be able to see it a bit better. So this is an ordinary Power BI report with lots of measures, as you can see here, and columns and so on. And I'm at a stage where I feel that it's time to clean up it a bit before delivering the report. So my question is, what's in there that could be deleted because it's not used, either in a visual or in another DAX expression or in filters or in whatever, groups, security groups or row level security expressions. So what I try to do is to identify usage of DAX measures or columns everywhere, basically, in the Power BI report. And if you use it, then you will be able to get a report like this, where here on the overview page, you see a list of all your tables with an indication. Let's just start like so. So you see a list of all your tables with their table sizes, and then you can start to drill into the hierarchies and see measures, columns, hierarchies, whatever there can be. And you see whether there are items, you see whether its items can be deleted or whether we have a mixed chain. So part of them can be deleted and some we have to keep because they are used. And yeah, and here in the last column, you see where they are used. So here, for example, the columns from the auto template are only used in DAX expressions, while product level fields from the product table are used in visuals and in filters. So we can scroll down here and then we will see that the subcategory, for example, is used in visuals, and then we can scroll down further and we'll be able to see the pages where these fields are used and the visuals as well. So here it's a good idea to give the visuals a nice name, so you don't have to identify them by the GUID, like in my sample report here. And if you want, you can also filter. If you want to examine certain things, what's used in visuals, you can put a filter in here and see which fields are used in visuals. Here we see all the measures. And also if I click on margin, the margin measure, first I see the DAX code, how it is defined. And if I scroll down further, I can see where this is used. So here I see the visuals. And if I would have had the filter on DAX expressions instead, again, scroll down to margin, then I see the path basically where this measure has been used. So we are talking about the margin measure here. And here you see sales.margin. So it's a sales table and my margin measure is used through a chain of different other measures, sales margin percentage, margin MATG margin percentage. So it's a lot in here where this margin measure has been used in other measures as well. And basically, if you want to clean up, if you just want to clean up your model, I would recommend just to set a filter on elements to delete. And then you would have basically a list of all elements that can be deleted from your model because they are not used. And here you see, although this measure, for example, is used in the DAX expression, at the end, it is not used. So the measure in which it is not used at the end. So here, for example, we see that it is used in sales month over month to date, average margin. And if we check that measure, I have tons of time intelligence measures here. So sales, okay, sales table month over month to date average margin, sales month over month to date average margin. Here you see that this is not used at all. So we can also, that means that we can also delete all the measures that have been created for this measure. But as we can see, if the measures you see here have all been created by the cool new tool Bravo from our Italian friends. So they give you the option to create all the time intelligence measures that there are for you. But at the end, after my reports I finished, I decided that I want to delete them. So that this would be quite a task, I would say, to delete all these measures by hand. And so there is actually an automated way to do it, which sits in the Excel file version that you can use as well. So let me quickly show you. The Cleaner tool is a tool that I have presented on my blog. So you can go to my website and search for Power BI Cleaner tool, and then you will be able to download 2 files. The first file, The first file is a pbi-t file, which will appear as the one I've just showed in here. And the second file is an Excel file that I'm going to show you now. The Excel file has some additional features that you cannot do with the Power BI version. And the first feature that the Excel file has is a sheet that again identifies all unused measures and puts them in the table to the left here. And then this allows you to check whether these measures are really to be deleted, or if you want to keep some of them. Also, another option would be, instead of deleting them, that you say you want to hide them. So this is also an option. You can basically say, well, let's hide these guys and delete the others. And if you're fine with your selection, then you click on this button here, and then a script will be created that you can use in the Tabular Editor external tool. Unfortunately, I cannot see the chat, so I would like to ask you whether all of you know Tabular Editor, but unfortunately, I won't be able to see the answer. So, okay, thumbs up, that looks good. So Tabular Editor, let me just drag it over here and onto the screen. Tabular Editor is a great free external tool. So this version, the version I'm using here, is a free external tool that has been created by Daniel Ortücker. And Tabular Editor allows you to basically work with your Power BI model. So in here, I'm connected live with a Power BI report I want to analyze or clean up. And to the left, you see a tree view of the model, of the data model, basically. So you see, if you expand here, you can see all the relationships. You could see roles if there were any. But here you see the tables in the model. And if you scroll down, you will also be able to see all the measures, for example. So, and you can do all sorts of stuff with Tabular Editor. You can create measures, you can bulk edit measures, you can also delete them here. But another cool thing that you can do with Tabular Editor is that it allows you to run C# scripts that perform actions on the model itself. So this is what we want to do now. What I'm going to do, so after I press the button here, this script has been copied into the clipboard. And if you have a sneak peek into the script here, at the end of the rows, you see that the first row, say, is hidden is equal to true at the end, and the following rows say delete. So the script has actually executed what we wanted, so hide some measures and delete the others. So now I go over to Tabular Editor and make sure, of course, that I'm connected to the correct model. And then I paste the code. And now watch all the measures that you see here, what will happen. So if I click 1 here, okay. Okay, so for some reason, the macro that I wrote applied the hide action only to columns. So it assumed that these were columns. You see the here that it says columns. So I was a bit. I have to actually adjust them so that we will be able to hide measures as well. Sorry about that. So I'm gonna say that these guys should be deleted as well. Click the button again and then paste the code again. And if I now click run, you see that basically most of the measures from my time intelligence have been deleted, like I told it. And now, if I go to my model in here and see, I want to check if everything went all right, I still see all the measures in here because I haven't clicked save. So after I do the changes in Tabular Editor, I have to click on save to transfer these changes to the model itself. So watch the space here to the right. If I click on save here, now the measures are gone in the model as well. So that's basically a fairly easy and quick way to clean up your model, delete unused stuff in there. And as per today, with regards to columns, the only option we have here is hide them, because what Tabular Editor can do now is to perform actions on the data model. But if we want to delete columns, we would have to do it in Power Query, or I mean, if you if you're working with ordinary Power BI files. So the only option currently you have with this macro here is to create a script that hides your columns from the table. I don't know whether that makes sense or not. That's up to you to decide to use it. But I think the option to delete measures automatically is fairly convenient. Yes, so that's basically the core functionality of the cleaner tool. And what the Excel version can also do in principally, but currently not, is say again? Okay. So theoretically, you have the option to analyze field usage not only in ordinary Power BI desktop files where data model and reports sit in one file. You also have the option to analyze models that sit in your analysis server. And then in that case, Excel would go to your Power BI, would try to connect to your Power BI service as well, and go through your workspaces and check all the connected reports, so all the thin reports basically that are connected to your analysis services model, and check the field usage in there, and then tell you which fields are not used at the end. Same goes with golden data sets, where you have split your Power BI file into data model only and some thin reports that connect to the data model. So instead of running your model on the analysis services server, you simply run your model in the Power BI service, but have reports running published in your service that connect to this model. So theoretically, you have both options, but in order to use them, you need to authorize against Power BI service, of course. Otherwise, that would be quite a security problem here. And in order to do that, I used the try it feature from the Power BI REST API, which is temporarily off, unfortunately. So usually you would have a button here that would tell you try it. And by clicking that button, you would connect, you would get a token that you could use in the Excel file. So you would paste the token in here. And this would allow you basically to authorize against the Power BI service and search all the reports for field usage in there. But unfortunately, currently, this is not possible. So hopefully, I was told that we should get back the feature soon. But honestly, it's been a couple of weeks already. And if I find some time, I will probably publish a workaround where you can bring your own token base, which allows you to bring your own token. There are other ways to authenticate against the service and retrieve a token so that we would be able to use this functionality as well. But unfortunately, I'm too busy right now to do it. So this is what the advanced features of the cleaner can do for you. Are there any questions so far before I demonstrate how to use it? No?
I see no
So
questions
then,
in the chat. No, everything good.
okay, okay. So basically, it's theoretically fairly straightforward. What you do is you download the pbi-t version in here, and then you open it in Power BI Desktop. And because it's a template file with parameters, the first thing you will be presented is a pop-up window where you have to enter two parameters. The first is the port number, and the second is the full path to the file to be analyzed. So my report is this, and now I need to find the port number. So background, when you use Power BI Desktop on your local machine, what's happening is that a local instance of SQL Server Analysis Services is running in the background, and this instance has a port which we need to connect to. And we need to fetch the port number. And if you use any of the many external tools, there are meanwhile, for example, Tabular Editor or DAX Studio or even Bravo. Any of these tools will show you the port number. So if I click on DAX Studio, for example, then DAX Studio will open. And what you will see down here is the port number. So it starts with localhost. And then we see 57995 in here. So that's the port number of the current report file. Let me just try to. So 57195, and the other thing is the path to the report file. You can paste it here with the codes in it. That doesn't hurt. So I click on load. And then a couple of windows will pop up. So the first is the warning about the privacy levels. Because we are combining data from different sources here, we will see this message. And as I usually click on ignore privacy levels because there's no sensitive information in here, or at least the sources we are connecting to are not public. So I click on save and continue. And the next thing we might see is the next thing we might see are warnings about running native database queries. But as I've just run it before to show you the report I've just shown, we won't see them here. So if you do this, you might see warnings about native database queries because we are querying the analysis services instance here. So just click OK. Just click OK that you're fine with it, and then you will basically see the report in front of you. So that's basically it. You only have to enter 2 parameters, and then you see the full report in here. So that's all there is. And with regards to the Excel file, you have to choose the right modus in here. So far, only the PBX desktop version is running, and you have to enter the same parameters in here like before. And if you're interested in how that's working, so you go to data, queries and connections, and then you will see tons of Power Query queries, because everything that's happening is actually, oopsie, is actually Power Query. A lot of Power Query queries in the background. So this is basically fully written in M code. So if you're interested in how things like that could be done in Power Query, how you can do fairly advanced stuff in it, feel free to examine all the queries here in the background. There are some limitations to it. So you find them in the blog post as well. So you need to be in the modern workspaces, and what you won't see is if you connect to the service, you will only see field usage from Power BI reports in the service. What is not going to be detected is field usage of in Excel files. So as some of you might know, you can connect with Excel to Power BI reports as well, or to Power BI models as well. And unfortunately, the usage of these fields in Excel is not covered in my tool. And I don't think that I will ever be able to do that, honestly. Yeah, not sure if there's an API that actually monitors this traffic. That would be an option, but I have no clue whether we have an API like this, to be honest. And you might have problems when you are using custom visuals in your reports. There I might not be able to fetch all the fields, so there might be some gaps in there. And also, if you use certain special characters in your fields, then you might get some false results as well. So if you're very creative with special signs in your DAX measures and columns, then you might run into problems as well. So that's the main limitations, I would say. Yes, so I can just encourage you to try it out. And if you run into any problems, just drop me a note in my blog or on Twitter or on LinkedIn or wherever. Yeah, and I will try to do my best to keep this updated and bug-free. Are there any other questions?
Sorry, Imke, I joined a bit late. I was otherwise engaged. Could you just in one line explain what problem your solution solves? I just ended very late in the presentation. My apologies.
Yeah, no worries. So I was talking about my Power BI cleaner tool, and it can clean up your model insofar as it identifies unused columns and unused measures in your file. So if you've imported too much stuff that you're not using anywhere, or created measures that you're not using at the end because whatever, my tool will identify which items are not used anywhere in the report and can therefore be deleted.
It compacts the database, basically. It's like a clean, okay. It compacts the database, basically.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Okay, crystal clear. Thank you.
Yeah. And
sorry, just to clarify, what do you mean by not used column? You mean in any measure or in any vision?
So you can import lots of columns and not use them anywhere in your reports. So and if that column has a significant size, then it would definitely make sense to delete it in order to make your model smaller, and yeah, basically not run into any restrictions with regards to model size. Often it would also improve the loading of your model. So yeah.
Okay, I see on your screen that you used in, and we can see in visual or in DAX expression.
Yeah.
Okay, really excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I try to detect usage in really all areas. So we have all DAX expressions, columns, hierarchies, report level measures, roles, bins, calculation items, and also title expressions. Conditional formatting. There's a lot of conditional formatting meanwhile in visuals. And I'm trying to detect all the usage of measures in there as well. Relationships, incremental refresh policies, filters, everywhere. Yeah, not only in the model. So I think there are there are some other tools that are able to identify field usage in models. I think the newest Bravo is also able to do that. But then you just see what's used in the model and not in your report. So it's not advisable to delete all these things. Yeah, so if there aren't any further questions, I would be very happy to hand over to Mathias, because I know he has a lot to tell. and a really excellent tool to present to us.
Thank you very much, Imke. Just one more thing. Give me just one more minute, Matthias, before I hand over to you, to show you a workaround how you can get a token. Is that okay? Because we know that on the Power BI on the website that you mentioned that the try out button is not there anymore. This issue is known since April and it's not there. That's true. But as a workaround, let me show you a quick workaround how you can get a token.
Yes, please. That would be
good. So with PowerShell is pretty easy. What you have to do is you have to install the Power BI commandlet. And once you install it, what you can do is you can say login Power BI. Then a window will pop up where you have to log in. Let me take my demo account. And what you can do is you can say get Power BI access token. And at the end, put as string. If you forget the as string, you will not get the full string. And if you do that, here you go. That's the, I think, easiest way to get a token, just to let you know, or the people in the call as well. So you can now really copy here the token. Keep in mind, without barrier, right? I think the authorization and the barrier part is not needed in your Excel sheet, right?
It depends on how I'm gonna adjust it. So I have to adjust my Excel sheet, but I will probably include the barrier. So but
yeah, that was it. And
so now I'm really under pressure to adjust it. Yeah.
All right, then. Thank you very much one more time, Imke. Really, really nice tool. Hopefully everyone will use it for the future reports and as well for the existing one to improve at the end the model. Matthias.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. Are you ready, Matthias?
I'm very ready, indeed.
Nice, nice. So feel free.
Fantastic. Let me share my screen and then get started. Sometimes get that one wrong, I think. Here we go. That should be the right one. Yes, looks like it. Okay. Awesome. So yeah, thanks very much for having me. And great pleasure, obviously, getting the opportunity here. Just want to say a few words about myself and then talk about pbi-tools. I think my background is quite important, actually, in terms of understanding the motivation behind pbi-tools. So I'm currently running a finance systems team for a company called YouGov in London. We provide internal analytics, run our ERP system, and worry about data governance. So Power BI is a very important part of what the team works with and how we produce outputs. Prior to having done that, I've actually spent quite a long time as a software engineer and software architect, and only sort of found my way into the Microsoft BI space at some later point in my career. And I'm saying that again because it's quite important to understand why pbi-tools started. Let me switch to the next slide. Here we go. Because running a sizable team producing outputs in Power BI and trying to be very efficient and scalable in that has been quite a challenge, I would say, given where Power BI is at. I would argue that Power BI out of the box does not support team collaboration and enterprise workflows very easily. And that's pretty much the motivation where pbi-tools is coming from. What I needed to achieve, really just to be able to do my job, was to have a way of getting change tracking for Power BI projects. I needed to figure out what changed between different versions of a report or a data set, for QA purposes, for visibility. I needed to be able to have a way of allowing people to collaborate on projects, so that it's not one model, one person, and ultimately I needed to achieve a way of actually automating various aspects around Power BI, specifically deployments. And so those three areas is what pbi-tools was developed for, and what it's actually helping with. The core idea is to step away from having this black box PBIX file where no one knows what's actually inside, and actually turning that file into a proper project where you can see what's going on inside, and where you can actually use existing and well-established source control features, and ultimately where you can then think about automation and automated deployments in particular. So today, this is meant to be an introductory talk, and it's not going to go very deep. I'm assuming that people maybe haven't even heard of pbi-tools before, and I want to sort of explain what it does and how you can get started. Looking on that slide, if you find the link at the bottom, go to pbi-tools /YouTube. That leads you to a public YouTube playlist, which has, I think, 23 or 24 recordings I've done previously, which cover all sorts of different aspects, and some of them go very deep indeed. So just moving on, this is a visualization that's sort of trying to explain the three different areas of pbi-tools. And don't worry, after that I'm going to move into some actual demos. So on the left-hand side, where it says develop, we basically have our well-known PBIX file or bin file in the case of a data model. If we're not using Power BI Desktop, and this is basically where for many people the story starts and ends, right? You're stuck with your PBIX file. You don't quite know what's in there. You probably have hundreds of them with different version numbers, but you can't really tell what's actually changed between them. And so again, this is where pbi-tools comes in. So if we then move over, pbi-tools has a feature called extract, and that will produce a so-called pbi-x proj, which is basically a folder structure containing all the various artifacts inside the pbi-x file. Quite similar to what Tabular Editor does for models, where Tabular Editor allows you to save as folder. pbi-tools does that for an entire pbi-x file, including the report. And then you can go back. Once you've extracted things, you can compile them back into a pbi-x file to go back into Power BI Desktop, for instance. Or, and this is the third important pillar, you can then actually have a deployment system pick up those sources and compile and deploy them as part of an automated pipeline. And that's all in place today. That's all possible. And certainly in my own team, extensively in use. And I know of quite a few people who've picked up pbi-tools since it came out as open source last year. So let me show you how to get started. I'm going to switch over here. That's the pbi-tools website, literally pbi-tools. And you can see, first of all, this green button, getting started. If you're new to pbi-tools and you want to give it a try, I highly recommend click the button, which basically gives you a 10-step tutorial from zero all the way to having gone back and forth on a particular project. So I'm going to show you some of that interactively now. First of all, pbi-tools is hosted on GitHub with full source control, with full source code. Over here, we can see there are 3 different flavors of pbi-tools, if you will. The one we're mostly interested in at this point is the desktop CLI. That's the version of pbi-tools that has all the features in it. However, it also requires that Power BI Desktop is actually installed. So this is the version that the developer would work with. In addition to that, there's also a core CLI, which is somehow limited in what it does, but it has the big advantage that it does not rely on Power BI Desktop. It works in any environment with no dependencies, and so this is meant to be used for automation scenarios. And it even works on Linux, so it's not even limited to Windows actually. Then there's a Docker image available, which makes it incredibly easy integrating pbi-tools into DevOps pipelines. So if you want to get started, let's just stick to the desktop CLI for the time being. You can click on the latest release here. That gets you to the releases page on GitHub. You can see RC1 from 7th of March is currently marked as the latest release. So that's the latest full release, if you will. However, there have been 3 intermediate pre-releases, one of them only a few days ago, actually. And this is where a lot of heavy development is currently underway. So I'm working very hard right now to actually achieve the RC2, the release candidate 2, and the next pre-release for that is most likely coming on Monday. So I would work with the very latest one of those for now. Scroll down all the way and go to Assets, and basically find this zip file, the one right at the top. It's very small, just 6 megabytes, as you can see. Download that, and then if I open that in Explorer, here we go. Oh, it's actually I didn't mean to do that. It's extracted it for me. So I'm gonna do that once more. I was a bit silly. I want to show in folder. My apologies. So here we go. Because one thing is quite important. The downloads are currently not signed. I still need to figure out how to actually get a proper certificate in there, which means by default, they're going to be blocked by Windows. That just happens whenever you download a zip file from the internet. It gets blocked, and then you can't run it. So what you need to do, that's why I'm showing that, go to Properties, which opens up this, and then this guy down here, the unblock checkbox, that's the one we need. Just check it, click OK, and then we're good. And then you can actually go and extract those files. Just put them wherever suits you. I've done that already. I've got them in a dedicated tools directory, and this is where I've got pbi-tools. The other thing I would highly recommend, and again, that's part of the tutorial, I would, why is it not, oh, here, right. So I would go to your environment variable editor, and you don't want to go for system environment variables. You want to go for your account. That one has no restrictions. So even in an enterprise context, you can edit any of those settings because they only relate to your user account. And you want to make sure that the folder you expanded pbi-tools into is on your path. So you can see I've got that already here, but you can basically edit this one yourself and add the path you extracted it to. The big advantage you get from doing that is that you can then basically open a shell. pbi-tools is just a command line tool for the time being, and you can literally type pbi-tools just like that, and it will just run no matter where you are. So this already verifies that it's actually working. One thing I can do is I can type pbi-tools info, and that one gives me an overview of what version I'm using, and where the tool is installed. And I can even see which versions of Power BI Desktop I've got installed. So I've got a Windows Store version, and then I've got an installer version. They run on 30 different versions. And I can even see any currently running sessions. So I've got Power BI Desktop running at the moment. It doesn't have a file, so there's no PBX file open with it, but there's a running process. So that's step one, basically getting the tool in place and making sure it works. What can I do now? I can grab any PBX file and extract it and basically convert it into a folder structure, as I said before. So let me just go back here and just find. So I'm just going to do that offline. I only just realized I should have made a file available, but it won't be a big deal. So I've got a file here. Copy. Yeah, in fact, I can do that here. All right, cool, all good. So I'm using Visual Studio Code. That's a lightweight and open source editor, and is particularly useful when it comes to looking at folder structures and lots of files in them. So I've got a file here called report. Visual Studio Code has the advantage that it has a terminal built in, so I can run pbi-tools in here as well, just as I did earlier. And I can now do pbi-tools extract, and then basically just reference the file that's currently in my folder. So literally just running that, as you can see, it takes a second or two. And I now have this new folder here, which has various files in it, and it has some subfolders as well. So this is basically a view of the internals of my PBX file. I can now finally not only see what's happening in there, but most importantly, if I put that under source control and then keep making changes to the file, I can track those changes very nicely. So I'm not going to be able to go through every single file and what they mean. That might take quite a while. So for now, just trust me that this is basically what the PBX file has in it. Let's only look at the report for the time being. And we can see how the internal structure of our report is basically replicated in the folder structure. So this particular report, and I should probably open it up so we can see what it looks like in Power BI Desktop. So if I do open report, that was this one. We'll see it has 5 pages. it's a thin report, so it's connected to a remote data set. We can see that down here. And the 5 pages are called, we've got that down here, sales by month, time calc year to date, time calc same period last year, and so on and so forth, right? So 5 pages. This page we're currently looking at, how many visuals can we actually see here? We can see a matrix, we can see 2 slices, and we can see a text box down here. So let's see what that looks like in our source control view. Also, it might be useful making this a little bigger for you. So again, we've got the 5 pages here in the same order as they appear in our report, which is why we've got that number as a prefix. If I now go into my first page, the one we were just looking at, and I open up visual containers, we can see there are 4 subfolders, each of which corresponds to one of the visuals. We've got pivot table here, which is basically matrix. We've got 2 slices, and we've got a text box. And we can now drill further and further to see all the internals that make up our report definition. So in Power BI, almost everything is JSON. That's the native format, how everything is defined. And I haven't invented anything here other than how to actually split things into files for better visibility. But what we're looking at here is coming straight from Power BI, basically. So this one, as an example, let's see if we can make sense of this. So first of all, visual type pivot table. Again, that's the internal name for matrix. We then have model references in here. So for as values, we've got the sales amount measure in our rows. We've got the month column from the date table. And in our columns, we've got the time calc column from time intelligence, which happens to be a calculation group. So we can see that. We can see how fields and visuals are related. And we can then also see how certain visual properties are actually defined. So for instance, here we've got 2 objects, grid and subtotals, which have certain value sets. So the grid has a text size set to 12. Subtotals have the row subtotal enabled and the column subtotal disabled. If we go back to a report, we can see column subtotal yes, row subtotal no, and we can also see if we go to general and what was it? Sorry, it was grid text size. Oh yes, of course. So grid, here we go, and global font size 12. There we go. That's the one. So that's how things come together. And what I can do now is I can basically put that folder structure into source control and then push it to a shared server. I can create branches and basically collaborate on the same report as long as you don't make any overlapping changes. Let me show you some of the benefits you can actually get straight away. So if I go back to my project here, I'm just gonna git enable this folder, and I'm going to put a git ignore file here to ignore PBIX files because I no longer need them. So you can see they are now changing to gray, so they're being ignored. There are also two other files. I can't go into too much detail right now, but just take it from me. When it comes to working with reports, you always want to ignore those two files. There was actually a GitHub issue today, which I answered exactly about the same. So yeah, just take my word for it. So let me just commit the original version of my report. So I'm going to do git add dot, which basically puts all the current changes into the staging area, and then I'm going to do git commit. In fact, we can Y type, right? I mean, I can use the UI for that. So I can say initial report version, and there we go. Cool. So now my source control view no longer shows any pending changes because everything that's currently in the folder has been committed. And now I can get the benefits of pbi-tools because once I start making small incremental changes, they're actually going to come through. And I'll see immediately how those changes are reflected in the underlying source code. So one very useful pbi-tools feature we've got for that is the ability to actually watch out for changes so that anything is extracted automatically. I need to go back and find out for the current PBI desktop session, what is the process ID? It's in this case, it's 19080. Then I'm going to say pbi-tools extract again, the same we did earlier. But now I'm going to say extract from the process ID 19080 and do that by watching for changes on that file. So what's now happening is that pbi-tools will sit there and will basically monitor the file that's currently open in Power BI Desktop. And if I go back there, if I make that window slightly smaller, and if I don't literally just click save, and you keep an eye here, you see some stuff is happening now. This is basically pbi-tools picking up, the file was saved, so I'm going to extract. If I change my slicer from 2009 to 2008 and click save again, we will then actually begin getting some changes coming through here. There we go. And so what's happened here? I changed the slicer on my sales by month page. And the change I did is very straightforward. And as you can see, even though there's lots of nested JSON going on here, I can actually see precisely that somebody made a change in a slicer from 2009 to 2008. And that's the kind of stuff you want to be able to see, particularly when you're running a larger team and when people commit certain changes and you're in a position where you need to decide whether or not that satisfies the requirements and you're happy to actually go into production. So that's what it looks like. And I can now go in here and basically say, changed slicer setting and that way I've got that particular change committed as well. And that's pretty much the gist of what happens locally as you're interacting with Power BI Desktop. Just very briefly, there are 3 more files which have changed, but this is really just sort of metadata. So the file I opened was previously saved with the February version of Power BI Desktop, and now it's been saved with the June version. That's actually reflected in this particular field, and there is one particular setting that's no longer present, So this is stuff we can generally ignore. The significant change, the actual slicer change, is the one we looked at earlier. So this is starting with a PBX file and actually putting it into source control. If we now want to go the other way around, I've got a separate project here. That's a project which is publicly available on GitHub, by the way. So if we just go back to my browser for a second, you can find that yourself. Go to the pbi-tools repo and go to report DevOps demo. So this is a repo which also ignores any PBX files. So you can see, and I just cloned that. So I just brought that down from GitHub. So if I now want to continue to do any work with it, the first thing I need to do as a developer is to actually compile those sources back into a PBX file. So let me show you that one. It's very straightforward. pbi-tools compile. And then I just reference the folder with my sources and hit enter. And again, as you can see, it takes no time at all. I've got a PBX file now, and I can go and open that. It happens to be exactly the same, so it's going to be a bit boring now, but let me just open it in any case just to prove it works. So this one is in here. You can see modified 435, which is my local time, and that will now open a PBX file that didn't exist a second ago and was produced entirely just from source code that's currently on GitHub. Here we go. But as I said, exactly same report. So there isn't really much else to be said around about compile. The only thing is when there is a data set, right? So we've only looked at a thin report so far. When there's a data set at play, we'll need to produce a PBIT file because data sets are not supported to be compiled into PBX files. But otherwise, it's exactly the same. So you then open up the PBIT file, and you need to do an initial data load in Power BI Desktop. And from that point on, it's all the same. So let me show you what that looks like in terms of deployment automation. And again, this is where this particular repository comes in handy, because not only does it have sources for 2 different PBX files and reports, it also uses the pbi-tools deployment feature. So this is a pbi-tools configuration file, and we can see we're actually defining a deployment here. And that one is hopefully pretty straightforward. So it's saying, well, we're deploying reports. The source for our report or the sources come from a folder, and we're actually using a wildcard. So we're basically grabbing any folder that happens to exist right at the root of our repository. Then we're authenticating with a service principal where the secret itself is stored as a environment variable, so that's not in source control. And if I then scroll down here, we can see we're defining 3 different environments: development, staging, production, and that determines which workspace we're actually deploying into. So if I then go to GitHub Actions, I can see I've had various workflow runs already, and I've got 3 different GitHub action workflows which correspond to my 3 environments. I've got production, staging, and development here. And I can actually trigger to run a deployment straight from here. So if I click Run Workflow and go back here, we can see in real time what's happening behind the scenes. So there's a new GitHub action pipeline kicking off now, and it's doing some initialization. And ultimately, we're going to get to pbi-tools. There we go. Now pbi-tools is running, and the whole thing was so fast. It's already done, right? So here we go. This is actually where the magic happens. pbi-tools found 2 source folders to deploy. It then created a PBX file from the first folder, which is created in a temporary location. It then creates the PBX file from the second folder, and then we're finding out what is the workspace ID for the workspace we want to deploy into, and then we're basically deploying those 2. And it's all done. And particularly since those are thin reports, that takes almost no time, right? So we can see it was 16 seconds. If I look at those reports in Power BI, there we go. Sorry, I've forgotten what the workspace was now. But no problem, we can find out easily. The workspace for development is reports DevOps Dev. Okay. So if I go to reports DevOps Dev, that one. So this is where I've got my 2 reports. If I go to the first one, that should look familiar now, right? So obviously, on my local machine, I just made that one change where I actually switched the slicer. So why don't I push that change up into my repository to see how actually let me make a different change. I just realized I did something silly. So let me do something different. Let me just change the landing page for the report. So if I open the report currently, I'm ending up on the sales by month page. So if I go down here and go and actually change, so the problem was I didn't change my branch earlier. So let me do Power BI user group demo. So let me create a new branch, and let me. In fact, actually, I can publish that part, that branch. That will do. So that branch actually has this change. Is that right, or am I confusing things now? 1 second. I think I'm confusing that with this different folder. Okay, so let me go here. Let me go to my report config. I've got a property here called active section index, which is currently set to 0, which corresponds to the first page in the report. If I change that to 1, and then push this particular change, so changed landing page, and then actually publish that branch. There we go. Just confused myself by effectively opening the same report in 2 different spaces. Not recommended. So if I now go back in here, it tells me that a new branch has had some pushes to it. So I can now go and create a merge request and can say open take this particular change and consider it to ultimately go into production. So what's now happening is this is where the automation bit comes in. Because I've opened this merge request, a deployment into my development environment has automatically been kicked off. So this is ultimately where the team will benefit because they just have to follow a few basic principles, and everything else will be taken care of by the system. So what's now happened is that my change with the landing page moved to the second page has automatically been deployed into development, and we can verify that. If I go back here and open the same report, I can see I'm now landing on time calc, which is my second page. I'm no longer on sales by month. Just to verify that this is actually the case, if I remove the page ID from the URL and go back in here, you can see this is still the case. So this is pretty much just a glimpse of what the end-to-end process looks like, starting off from extracting a PBX file, investigating the folder structure we've extracted, then starting to make a few changes and seeing how they're actually represented, ultimately going to having an automated deployment pipeline. And just as a final reference, all of that is available and working for datasets as well. So there's another sample repository here called Dataset DevOps Demo, which has a very similar setup. The only difference is that we're actually deploying a Power BI model here. And we can see I actually ran the development deployment earlier. If we look into the logs for this particular deployment step, we can see there's a little bit more going on here because we're emitting all sorts of information with respect to data sets. But ultimately, it then gets, it ends up here as well. And if I find my data set, I think it was that one. Yeah. So that's the one which was actually being refreshed as part of the deployment. And just closing the circle here with the new feature in the Data Hub, one thing I can now take advantage of is actually the fact that a convention which pbi-tools supports, and I've done various other talks about that already, is to inject metadata about my deployments right into the model. So by convention, I always create a table called info, which basically only contains a few measures, and each of those measures get populated with information from the deployment pipeline. So I can see when the data was updated, which environment we were deploying into, what was the GitHub run ID, what was the branch we were actually deploying from. So if I take this one, it's 2630.195.484, and go back to GitHub, dev. There we go. That's the one. So if I take this link here, you can see that's actually the run ID, which we just saw straight in Power BI as part of my data set, which means I've got the data set in Power BI. In order to know where it's come from, I can go back to my CI/CD system. I can see precisely when that deployment was triggered, how it was triggered. I can see precisely what was the corresponding last change that triggered the deployment, what actually changed inside my sources, there are even some summary logs which I can download here. So this is a very quick, admittedly, run through of what pbi-tools can do. Very happy to take any questions.
Hi, Mathias. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really cool. Just quick question. So you or I had the problem that when I wanted to use Git, I just created a pbi-t file, so I don't have data to push into GitHub, right? So that the data model is not included. How does your tool handle it if you have data in your PBIX file? Is this pushed to GitHub too?
No. It only worries about metadata. It only worries about your model definition, right? The sources, if you will, not the data itself. That's definitely not something you would want to have in source control, even, right? And if the data did get pushed there, it would arguably be a problem, actually. So yes, it's not there. It's as lean as it can be, and it's just metadata.
So you refresh or you get the data after publishing it and refresh it via service.
Correct. Yes. So the dataset deployment actually includes a refresh step, so which is optional. So you can choose to use that or not. But this particular example, you can see actually starting a refresh. It obviously that all depends on sort of how expensive your refreshes are, right? If they only take a few minutes, then you can easily afford to run that as part of a CI/CD pipeline. If they take 2 hours, then maybe you need a slightly different approach. You definitely need to ensure that after any sort of model update, there is a corresponding refresh coming at some point.
Cool, thank you. Maybe a second question if I have time. I used to just change the ending of the file to zip, so I have the definition. And I looked into your tool, and that was bit, or I thought about what happens if Power BI would ever change something in this definition. If you compile it back, what's your experience? How robust is this? Are you worried?
Good question, and definitely a really important one, right? So for full sort of transparency, the compilation of sources back into PBX file, right? That is not officially endorsed by Microsoft. That is, there is no public API for that, and this is not something Microsoft officially supports, right? I'm doing it anyways because I've got a job to do. And as I said, right, I was put in charge of, setting up this analytics function, and I wanted to do it in a way where it's scalable and where I can ensure quality. So I simply needed a way for us to automate and to use source control. Microsoft also provides no alternative at this point. So do use it at your own risk, right? However, there is people at Microsoft have taken notice of this happening, and also they've taken notice of there being really significant demand, at least in sort of certain areas in the community. And I think you know, we can all be optimistic that things will change and that things will actually get more and more supported down the line. Am I worried? No, I'm not worried because whilst the tool was released only in autumn last year, I've been working on this for about 6 years now. So I've literally with dozens and dozens of different Power BI desktop releases. And at YouGov, where I'm running the team, we've been running this approach in production for years now. So I've seen many releases of Power BI come and go, and there were maybe 2 or 3 minor hiccups where something changed, which I had to react to. But generally, it's always been incredibly stable. I think I made a few sort of architectural changes about 6 months ago, which, from my point of view, should actually future-proof things for quite a while. So I'm personally extremely relaxed about it. However, obviously, everyone needs to make their own judgment here, right? And once we're in a position where PBIX internals are officially documented and supported by Microsoft, I'll be the first one to obviously change accordingly and only use supported APIs.
Yeah, sure. I love it. Thanks you for providing us and pushing it forward in, as I think, the right direction. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
I would have a question. Does this solution cover custom visual?
Custom visuals?
So, for example, if you are used to work with Zebra BI, then can you either? Yeah. No issue with. Okay.
Yeah, no, there's no problem with that. So custom visuals, do I have an example? No, I don't have one right now, but yeah, I mean, custom visuals are basically embedded into the pbi-x container with all their respective resources. So all the custom visual JavaScript and all the custom visuals artifacts are embedded there. When a custom visual is used as a report visual, there's really no difference compared to any out-of-the-box visuals. You know, there's basically the custom visual identifier, and then whatever public properties the custom visual exposes are declared in a JSON. But as far as pbi-tools is concerned, it makes no difference. It's the exact same JSON structure at the end of the day. And yes, they are supported. If you use loads of them, it might slightly bloat your source control system because, again, all the custom visual sources themselves are embedded, but generally they don't change often, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay, thank you very much.
I also have a question. Is it possible to automate somehow the extraction? Like, I think at the beginning you did the extraction with the PBI command line, pbi-tools in the command line. Is it possible to somehow automate that automatically pbi-x is extracted in the folder structure and only the folder structure is uploaded and not the pbi-x file?
So there are some people I'm aware of who achieved that using Git hooks, where you basically integrate with. So Git hooks are basically an extension mechanism which Git, the source control system, provides, where you can say that a certain external tool should be triggered. For instance, when a commit is made, right? And so if you put those two things together, you know, having pbi-tools extract as a command and then Git hooks, you pretty much get there. I'll have to leave it there. It's not something I've personally done or not something which pbi-tools would directly support, but it's absolutely possible. I mean, again, right? So this is it's a community tool, right? So I'm literally using my own free time to work on this. Everyone is more than welcome to contribute here and to think about those kinds of use cases, for instance, and then bring them back to the community and document, for instance.
Sure. I just recently had a customer case where that was the requirement. So I thought I'd keep my question until today. But thank you.
Absolutely. The thing with Git hooks is they require a bit of one-off setup on each developer machine. So that's the price you have to pay. You got to make sure that because if I remember correctly, that would be a local Git hook. Yes, that would be a local Git hook, and I think those are not committed when you push to a central Git repository. So you literally have to replicate the same setup consistently on each developer's machine. Doesn't sound super appealing to me, but it's possible, and yeah, would be super keen to see someone blog about it. Anyone else? I think we're on time now as well, right?
Yeah, perfectly on time.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't see any hands raised. Let me calling it once. Any further questions? Calling it twice. Calling it 3 times. All right, Matthias, thank you very, very much. Really appreciated the whole session. Really useful tool. I mean, I got a lot of questions how we can do CI/CD, and as you mentioned, it's nothing out of the box there. So this is a perfect, let's say, solution, alternative, however you want to wish to see it, but perfectly fine. Thank you very much, Matthias.
Thank you.
Then let me do the closing. I'm gonna take over the screen one last time for the next 1 minute or two. And yeah, reminder for future meetups. Our next meetup is as usual every first Thursday of the month, starting from 4 to 6 p.m. Swiss time. The next meetup is therefore on the 4th of August. It will be online, and the topic will be one is the road to success for the Power BI Championship. We invited Karim and Anthony to talk about their solution, which they provided in the last Power BI Championship, and we have a slot open. So if you have any topics you wish to present, feel free to reach out to us. Otherwise, I think we can also do some best practices, especially while Karim and Anthony will present how they did the solution. We can probably present also some tips and tricks how to improve some little things in Power BI. Yes, stay tuned. Some useful links at the end of the slide as usual, and some resources. If you're new to Power BI, if you wish to start with it, feel free to have here some learning material. And yes, that's all. Thank you very much for participating. I'll stay for the next few minutes. If you have any kind of questions, happy to take them. Doesn't need to be related to today's sessions. So feel free to raise your hand and ask questions.
Can you go quickly to the previous slide with the learning material? That would be nice.
Sure.
And we can make a screen copy.
This one.
Yeah.
Let's see, YouTube is this way written. I see no questions, no hand raised. Looks like everyone knows everything. Perfect.
In this case, everyone have a nice evening and see you soon.
Yes. Thanks, Dennis. All right. Have a nice evening. Then I'm going to close the call. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you.